Breaking. Arms flood Ukraine. A stab in Putin's back. The Kremlin's confidence shatters. Everything changes. Skies on fire. Planes are falling. Takeoffs turn to flames. Naval drones storm the Black Sea. Russia's fleet doomed. Sea war rewritten. Enemy destroyed. Aliyev humbles Putin on the world stage. A public humiliation nobody saw coming. Crimea hit. A strike that could flip the map. The countdown is on. Papers versus reality. Pride versus ruin. All of it in our special edition of Hotspot. Sea war rewritten by Ukraine. Western media are raving about Kyiv's unmanned sea hunters. In just 3.5 years, these fast, low-signature, hard-to-hit naval drones have seized the Black Sea battle space, driving Russia's fleet out of Sevastopol and pinning the rest near Novorossiysk. What's the secret sauce and what comes next? The wins and the future of Ukraine's sea drones in the video ahead.
The days of the Russian Black Sea Fleet are numbered. There is less and less time left until the occupiers are completely defeated. This week, Ukraine marks the 3rd anniversary of the first strike on the Crimean Bridge. On October 8, 2022, a powerful explosion rocked the crossing, seriously damaging both the road surface and the railway line. At that time, Ukraine saw the emergence of an entirely new and unique branch of the military and its own advanced type of weapon, naval drones. As a result of the incident, automobile traffic on the Crimean Bridge was halted. It was then that the whole world learned what Ukrainian naval drones are capable of.
Ukraine demonstrated that its naval drones, here they are, there's probably a picture of what they look like. These naval drones are an effective weapon.
Over the past 3 years, Ukrainian naval UAVs have become the masters of the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Putin's much-vaunted Black Sea fleet has been forced to hide from our drones in remote ports.
This is essentially a kind of army of the future. This is the element that will help save human lives, that will allow us to operate more efficiently.
The effectiveness of modern Ukrainian naval weaponry is hard to dispute. Time and again, it manages to break through enemy defenses and make its way into Russian ports and bays.
Drones both in the air and on the ground are highly visible, and they are targeted by automatic cannons as well. So basically, they open what seems to be aimed fire, but really it's more like shooting by eye, and yet they can't hit it. And that's despite the fact that it's perfectly lit, clearly visible, moving relatively close by, they still can't hit it. It's a total disaster.
And with every new attack on Russian warships, Ukrainian drones are becoming more and more advanced technologically.
Naturally, now they are going to actively target this entire supply chain, simply because the Ukrainians have really committed themselves to this effort. They are succeeding, they see that Russia's air defense system is failing everywhere, so why not give it a try?
Now Putin no longer has a single remote base in the Black Sea where the bunker dweller could hide his fleet from Ukrainian drones. It has just been reported that Ukroboronprom has signed a cooperation agreement with American partners, which gives Ukraine the opportunity to acquire for itself Fontupeniro Wastarsu, a completely new type of drone ekranoplan with a range of almost 5,000 kilometers and a payload of 1 ton.
We have agreed to cooperate within the float and fly concept, and we also plan to jointly develop solutions to increase the speed and stability of our products. We are interested in developing production on the territory of Ukraine as well as organizing training for our weapons specialists.
This news has caused yet another wave of panic in the Kremlin. Now every military vessel and all, without exception, Russian army bases on the Black Sea are in the crosshairs of the Ukrainian armed forces.
We can clearly see that both the sheer quantity and the impressive quality of these advanced drones now effectively allow Ukrainian forces to significantly vary their tactical use and thereby create a certain diverse mix of different types of unmanned aerial vehicles in order to achieve their objectives.
And Ukrainian soldiers, like no one else, know how to achieve their goals by any means possible. It's no coincidence that they are setting global trends in naval operations. Ukraine's naval drones have prompted other countries to adopt similar technologies. Today, our unmanned boats are the main participants in modern exercises conducted by Portugal. in front of representatives of NATO naval forces with the involvement of dozens of defense and technology companies and their experimental weapons, a 3-week battle is being held for control over a notional 10,000 square miles of ocean. As a result of the prolonged battle at sea, Ukrainian drones demonstrated their highest level of effectiveness. Now, according to military experts, the experience gained by the Ukrainian armed forces will be scaled up in the Black Sea.
Ukraine has successfully acquired, and this is indeed confirmed by all recent and unfolding events, a highly effective and potent weapon to decisively counter Russia's long-standing naval monopoly, and in actual fact has significantly undermined that very monopoly.
If a year ago Ukrainian drones had effectively driven the Russian fleets out of Sevastopol, now they will find no peace even in Novorossiysk. The Kremlin is clearly unable to keep up with Ukraine's new maritime technologies. While Russian sailors are training to shoot at surface targets, Mogura drones, for example, are being equipped with machine guns, anti-aircraft and anti-ship missiles. Some of them are even already serving as miniature aircraft carriers, acting as platforms for launching drones.
Such advanced drones can come in various distinct types, and in addition to their individual capabilities, they can be effectively utilized in coordinated swarm tactics to reliably inflict significant damage upon the enemy fleet.
By invading Ukraine in 2014, Putin triggered a whole revolution in naval warfare. Over the past 3 years, Ukraine has completely rewritten the course of such battles, and Western experts are already comparing its contribution to the development of naval forces to technological breakthroughs of their time, such as the construction of submarines or even the advent of steam replacing sails on ships.
Breaking! Aliyev humiliated Putin in front of the whole world. A blow Moscow did not expect. The dictator was even forced to apologize. Russia has effectively been driven out of the Caucasus. And there's more. Is Azerbaijan secretly supplying weapons to Kyiv? Putin is losing everything. These details will shock you. Watch the full report for all the jaw-dropping facts.
Nearly a year after the Azerbaijani plane was shot down over Grozny, Putin, with his tail between his legs, admitted Russia's responsibility for the disaster.
The second reason lies in technical malfunctions of Russia's own air defense system. And the 2 missiles that were launched did not directly hit the plane. If that had happened, it would have crashed on the spot. And they exploded because it was a self-destruction just a few meters away, about 10 meters or so. And that's why the damage was caused mainly not by the warhead's striking elements, but most likely by fragments of the missiles themselves.
Well, how did he admit it? Naturally, not fully. As usual, Putin blamed Ukraine for everything.
The first point is that there was a Ukrainian drone in the sky. We were tracking 3 such drones at once, which had crossed the border of the Russian Federation at night on the day of the tragedy.
Still, he had to grovel before Aliyev anyway, as well as promise to deal with those responsible and pay compensation. After all, for Russia, which is under unprecedented sanctions pressure, any partner willing to maintain trade with it means a great deal.
Of course, everything absolutely required in such tragic and unfortunate cases will be fully and completely done by the Russian side regarding compensation, and a thorough legal assessment will be given for all officials involved. All officials.
After that, in Baku, the director of the Russian edition of Sputnik was released, and in Russia, one of the detained Azerbaijani citizens was freed. But it's not that simple. After a year of confrontation with Russia, Aliyev publicly took Ukraine's side and called Russia an occupier.
Ukraine, like the rest of the world, considers these occupied territories to be part of Ukraine. Azerbaijan also considers them part of Ukraine. How could they sacrifice and say, no, this is not part of Ukraine?
Moreover, Aliyev accepted patches from the Ukrainian armed forces as a gift and advised Ukrainians not to agree to the occupation of their territories.
I truly think that this deeply resonates with the profound aspirations of the Ukrainian people. Their unwavering desire to never, ever agree to any form of occupation. That is the main advice. That's exactly what we did, that is.
And after Russia began shelling Azerbaijani oil depots and gas distribution stations in Ukraine, the media reported that Azerbaijan might lift the embargo on arms supplies. They also started producing ammunition for Ukraine there.
We have provided humanitarian and financial aid totaling 40 million euros, and this assistance continues. It is completely transparent and purely humanitarian in nature. We have implemented several social infrastructure projects in the city of Irpin and will continue to do so. You know that Ukrainian children regularly visit us as guests. We will do everything in our power to help.
After all, the Russians not only refused to admit guilt for the downed plane, but also began to harshly crack down on members of the Azerbaijani diaspora. The security forces even killed 2 people, and Russian propagandists even threatened Azerbaijan with war.
Some of the victims have broken ribs. There are those who suffered spinal and internal organ injuries. If Azerbaijan had not intervened, the number of victims could have been hundreds of times higher.
And I want to remind you of the amount of money that is transferred from Russia to Azerbaijan, not from Azerbaijan to Russia. And then apparently the situation could change dramatically. Is this exactly what you are counting on? Or, considering the 300 kilometers of border and seeing what is allowed and watching how on central television everyone is allowed to say anything, do you want to go to war?
At the SCO forum in Beijing, Aliyev shook Putin's hand very coldly and demonstratively refused to communicate with him.
This was an unprecedented act against our people. We are not responsible for the deterioration of relations. We respond constructively and lawfully, but we will never tolerate any signs or manifestations of aggression or disrespect towards us.
And of course, a real blow below the belt. Azerbaijan and Armenia signed a peace agreement in the United States, completely ignoring Russia.
Armenia and Azerbaijan commit to permanently cease hostilities, open trade, establish transport links and diplomatic relations, and respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
That is why, of course, Aliyev accepted all of Putin's humiliations for the economic benefit of his country. But this does not mean at all that the bloody dictator and his terrorist country are forgiven and that the old friendship will return.
Shock! Russia's skies are collapsing. Planes are going down one after another. Humiliating takeoffs turn into fiery disasters as the system fractures at the seams. Experts warn the equipment is failing and pilots are helpless. Has the end of Russian aviation already begun? Watch the full report to find out.
Russians have destroyed yet another fighter jet with their own hands.
A MiG-31 fighter jet has crashed in Russia. The disaster occurred in the Lipetsk region. The crew managed to eject in time. It seems Russia has a new tradition now. MiGs take off only to make a spectacular crash landing.
The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the information, but of course did not name the cause of the crash.
This is also a problem of the Russian military-industrial complex. There are issues with supplying spare parts, problems with maintaining the aircraft fleet, and accordingly the fleet itself. For the most part, these are already outdated aircraft of the Russian aerospace forces that have already exceeded their operational lifespan. That's why the accident rate among Russian aerospace forces aircraft is so high.
But the most interesting thing is that this is already the 4th military plane to crash since the beginning of this year. The first was a Su-25.
According to preliminary reports, the cause of the incident was a technical malfunction.
A month later, in April, a Tu-22M3 missile-carrying bomber crashed in Irkutsk. And the same fate befell the 3rd Su-34 fighter to crash this year.
The reason was trivial. The landing gear failed to deploy. While the navigator was trying to revive the landing gear, time was ticking away. He ejected, but as they say, he landed on meaning alone.
Even without Ukraine's help, Russians are quite successful at destroying themselves and their own equipment. But what is the cause of such disasters?
It's a matter of comprehensive pressure from Western countries, primarily the United States. Accordingly, the European Union, through its comprehensive sanction packages, effectively prevents the Russian side from fully and completely supplying essential spare parts to the Russian aerospace forces, thereby significantly impacting their operational capabilities. I want to emphasize once again that this problem also exists in civil aviation. Moreover, at this particular point in time, all concerted attempts to successfully implement so-called import substitution programs have essentially and unequivocally failed. Hiro.
But wait, the Kremlin old man is convinced that everything is just fine with Russia's combat aviation. They even managed to share it.
And now, despite the fact that we ourselves need combat aviation in the context of the special military operation, I do not believe that our aviation industry enterprises are oversized. Not only do we fully meet the needs of the armed forces of the Russian Federation today, thank you, but we also supply the necessary equipment for export. It is in great demand.
At the moment, it should be noted that the Russian Federation has significantly lost its position precisely because of the inability to scale up production of the very latest advanced fighter jets and other related essential items for the operational needs of foreign partners. It should be noted that at the moment, the so-called Indian contracts are at risk of falling through.
Well, okay, maybe things are better with civil aviation in Russia?
Today they're offering you flying coffins, and tomorrow you won't even have that. At least 4 million people will suddenly and unexpectedly lose the essential ability to get crucial medical care, receive vital life-saving cargo, or spend their leisurely summer on a warm, inviting seashore.
But it seems not. There are fewer and fewer operational civil aircraft in Russia, and by 2030 the country risks losing half of its fleet altogether.
Without foreign components, aviation is literally suffocating. Sanctions have cut Russia off from Boeing, Airbus and their services, while domestic engines and electronics remain only on paper. This is not just a failure of the industry, it's a diagnosis for the entire Russian economy.
The same goes for spending. Next year, the budget for aircraft production and repair will be reduced by 1.5 times.
The country is effectively sliding backwards and losing its leading position in the global aircraft manufacturing market. Moreover, the Russian Federation is currently unable to even make up for the shortage of aircraft on its domestic markets.
They promised it by the end of 2025, but unfortunately they miscalculated. In Russia, the certification deadlines for the new Il-114 aircraft have once again been missed. But the reason for the delay, strangely enough, is a lack of components, resources, and technology.
Urgent! Russian generals are writing victories on paper, while on the front they face defeat. Ukrainian forces hold key points and logistics routes and are surging forward. Occupation troops are being ground down in the bloody meat grinder. Sensational losses the Kremlin is trying to hide. The Russians have been pushed off parts of the front. All the latest frontline details, watch now.
Time is no longer on the Kremlin side, and in a prolonged standoff, Ukraine's chances of winning the war are much higher than Putin's. This is the conclusion reached by Western journalists who visited the positions of the Ukrainian armed forces.
Ukraine's carefully considered and meticulously executed strategy in the ongoing and brutal war of attrition, a conflict defined by sustained combat and the gradual wearing down of opposing forces, is now demonstrably showing a series of truly unexpected and quite significant results.
Constant enemy losses and the adaptation of the Ukrainian armed forces to modern combat tactics, analysts assert, are opening up opportunities for Kyiv's long-term victory. Russia was counting on a rapid advance in northeastern Ukraine. However, key cities and logistical hubs remain under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. By the fall of 2025, Russian generals are capturing Ukrainian towns and villages only in words and in fake reports for the man in the bunker.
It is clear that the Russian army is unlikely to be able to accomplish these tasks. But General Gerasimov, the chief of the General Staff, according to certain leaks that have appeared on social media, reported to Putin about the latest successes of the Russian troops. In particular, he claimed that the grouping of Ukrainian armed forces near the Lebenbik Reservoir had been destroyed, which is not true. And in addition, he stated that Russian troops are clearing the southern districts of the city of Kupiansk, which is also not true.
What is actually happening in the long-suffering but still unyielding Kupiansk was shown by the operators of the 8th Special Operations Forces Regiment. The enemy in this direction truly does not stop trying to break through the Ukrainian defenses. In the Kupiansk direction, there were at least 8 attempted attacks by the occupiers over the past day. However, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to thwart the enemy's plans to advance. The defense forces repelled assault actions in the areas of Petropavlivka, Novoplatonivka, Piszczanowe, and Stepova Novoselivka. Using strike FPV drones, the occupiers were driven into the nearest building, after which the operators cleared several structures where the enemy had taken up positions. The occupiers are also having a tough time today in the Zaporizhzhia direction. There, partisans from the Atesh movement helped destroy a mobile enemy command post. Concerned citizens provided the exact coordinates of the occupiers' communications vehicle, which was being used as a mobile command post to control enemy units. The destruction of this communications hub caused chaos in the occupiers' command system. Coordination between units and the transmission of orders were disrupted, which seriously affected the enemy's combat capability in this sector of the front. And here are the images of a burning fuel and lubricants depot belonging to the occupiers in the northern Slobozhanshchina direction. In the past few days, our border guards have managed to destroy enemy hideouts and communication equipment. In addition, the enemy in the northern Slobozhanshchina direction has also suffered personnel losses. Overall, in this and the Kursk directions, Ukrainian defenders repelled 7 Russian attacks. The enemy carried out several airstrikes on our positions, dropping a total of 9 guided bombs and conducting 198 artillery shellings. The situation remains difficult in the Lyman direction. There, the enemy attacked 12 times, attempting to advance near the settlements of Srednya, Novoselivka and Derilova. Nevertheless, a special unit of Ukrainian military intelligence is managing to accurately and effectively destroy enemy forces, their equipment and drones. Due to heavy losses in this and other directions, Russian forces have been forced to slow down their offensive pace, military analysts explain.
As a result, Russian activity on the front decreased somewhat in September. The number of assaults they carry out drops in direct proportion to their personnel losses.
The official Ukrainian statistics also do little to encourage the occupiers to launch these meat grinder assaults. Thus, September 2020 stood out as a showcase moment for the effectiveness of National Guard units. It was a particularly telling period for the performance of the National Guard units. Thanks to the coordinated efforts of the guardsmen, the enemy lost at least 677 vehicles, 418 artillery systems, nearly 200 radar stations, 17 multiple rocket launchers, 29 tanks, and almost 70 ammunition depots over the past month. Meanwhile, the Russian army continues to strike exclusively at civilians and residential buildings. And it should be noted that this is happening not only in Ukraine. Recently, Russia's much-vaunted air defense system hit a residential building in the Belgorod region with a missile. The video shows the upper floors of the apartment building taking the hit. As a result, according to Russian media, windows were blown out in 15 apartments. 24 parked cars were damaged, and officially, there were no casualties. However, judging by the footage published online, the destruction of the building may be much more serious.
Breaking. A massive blow to Crimea. Our forces struck hard and momentum is shifting. The West has signaled support and what once felt unimaginable is now unfolding in real time. This could be the strike that rewrites the war. Ukrainian troops are gearing up to surge forward. Moscow is sending what looks like a farewell kiss to Crimea. The turning point is here. Every fresh detail next.
Ukraine may attack Crimea. This bold statement was made by Sky News analyst Michael Clark. And we're not talking about the usual strikes that the defense forces carry out almost every day, but about a large-scale one. According to Clark, Ukraine could launch an airstrike or a naval landing against Russian positions in Crimea. And in his opinion, this will happen before winter.
Ukrainians like to deliver surprises. They know that this affects not only the Russians on the front line, but also the West's perception of how things are going in Ukraine.
The Sky News analyst also believes that given Ukraine's long-range strike capabilities, an attack on the Kerch Bridge cannot be ruled out.
You can create a breach in the air defense shield, and then you'll want to put something through it to hit something even more valuable.
Ukraine has attacked the Kerch Bridge 3 times. In 2022, a truck loaded with about 20 tons of explosives in TNT equivalent was used to strike the crossing. In 2023, the bridge was attacked by combat sea drones. And in 2025, the SBU blew up the Kerch Bridge underwater. Explosives were planted near the key supports. And while the analyst's suggestion of a 4th attack sounds encouraging, official Kyiv is not thrilled about it.
Of course, there's no need to write about this today. These are somewhat different stages of the war. And in general, there's no need to announce intentions in a war that's been going on for almost 4 years. Russia is still investing significant resources in countering Ukraine. We see everything they're doing. I won't comment on offensive operations, it's not entirely appropriate.
Experts and the military are also against such loud statements. They really are working on Crimea. Demilitarization is in full swing, but that's all you need to know.
This is the personal opinion of a private individual who has no connection to the actual state of affairs. The only way to assess such a publication is as an emphasis that Crimea is a temporarily occupied Ukrainian peninsula. It has not only remained on the agenda for our country's defense forces, but is now, I would even say, in active development. Right now, there is an active phase underway to demilitarize temporarily occupied Crimea. All these so-called analytical calculations and forecasts have nothing to do with the actual realities taking place. The current reality is that the defense forces, in particular the main directorate of Ukraine, as you know, the security service of Ukraine, the naval forces, the armed forces of Ukraine, and other related structures are carrying out the necessary work.
This work consists of ongoing targeted operations to destroy Russian radar systems, air defense installations, aircraft, and so on. Ukrainians can witness all of this almost on a daily basis. And this systematic destruction of Russian weaponry is not happening by chance, confirms the spokesperson for the Ukrainian Navy, Dmytro Pletenchuk. This is exactly where it all begins.
If you want to influence the enemy, whether on their territory or on your own territory that the enemy has occupied, the first thing you need to do is eliminate all obstacles. This will allow you to gain an advantage in the air. After all, this in turn also means an advantage on the ground. To achieve this, you need to eliminate the enemy's countermeasures. In other words, destroy their air defense systems. That's why this is the top priority, the starting point for any further action.
But as for what exactly the next action will be, that's not something anyone needs to know. Speculation won't do any good either, especially from Western analysts. There's no need to interfere with the work of the defense forces. And this is a rule that Ukrainians have learned well over nearly 4 years of full-scale war.
At this moment, that's all from me, Maria Farafonova. Even more hellish Frontline news in our new episode. But for now, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.